somebody who did win an Oscar, an Academy Award, and gave it to Zelensky is Sean Penn. Sean Penn is in the news because Sean Penn believes that if you are not vaccinated, you should have to be forced to stay home, not have a job, and not go to work. You should just go home and die. Will you? Says Sean Penn.
Crazy.
Like, how detached from like the common man can you be? I ask. Like, when you really think about it, like he had
also, like, this tweet that we've pulled up is from December 18th, 2022. So that means this interview hopefully was, it's not something from last year. This is several years into this. It wasn't the Washington Post that just ran an article saying the most COVID deaths are among vaccinated people. Like, yes. This is such a bizarre... Well, then they
softened that headline. They softened that headline.
Well, I don't care. I saw it first. This is such a bizarre stance to take. Like, when we were at the height of the panic of lockdowns and stuff, like,
people were angry.
It's still not an okay thing to say, but I would understand where you're more freaked out. Whereas, like, 2 years in, this is your position? Like
have you just not been paying attention to the news, or are you just that clueless? But that's the thing. They're talking heads. They are that clueless most of the time.
Well, and also, what is this message saying? Like, if you don't get vaccinated, you should suffer. Like, you shouldn't have the choice.
It's
you
malice.
Should have to conform to the medical authority of the government to support yourself. Otherwise, you should be ostracized, says the actor? Question. Like, why are you the one who's doling out this advice?
It's very funny how quickly it proved that a lot of like celebrities are extremely authoritarian. Like, extremely
They're so authoritarian. But also because I think rules are bent for them all the time. So they're like, yeah, take the vaccine. I don't care. I will go off and live somewhere else. Like, exceptions are made for me, but everyone else should comply.
Somebody pointed this out. It says Sean Penn, journalist who called Hugo Chavez a dictator, should be jailed. Like, I love it because
it's not my favorite political authority.
I mean, I'm better. I'm better like under the idea that I just like, maybe he's getting old and this is all like a hilarious. Like, I just want to say the worst things possible. Maybe he's just a nihilist, but I don't think that's what it is. But
he's actually trolling everyone. He's trying to get everyone to be like, can you believe he said that?
This dude went to Ukraine and gave Zelensky an Oscar.
What is Zelensky going to do with it?
Like, well, Zelensky was an actor, so maybe he was honored.
But it doesn't work. Like, Sean Penn doesn't get to be like, I'm officially bestowing you with my Oscar. Like, it's as if you won it. Like, that's just weird.
Is this like a weapon I can use against Russia? Like, what am I supposed to do with this thing? Like, it makes no sense. So beyond this, the point of this topic, guys, is I wanted to draw kind of a comparison about two people who have taken what you would call two people in the same sphere, which is Sean Penn and Tim Robbins, both actors, both celebrities, both had their own early opinions on COVID and went down vastly different paths as far as their understanding of what it meant for culture, their understanding of what the pandemic meant as far as how it related to politics and our government. And it's a shocking difference between the two. So we have this article from Breitbart from about Tim Robbins. He was on Russell Brand's podcast, and they
what
released.
Is Tim Robbins in? I'm not as familiar.
I would have to go like a bunch of stuff. Like, he's in a bunch of stuff that I've seen, but like
Mystic River.
Yes, okay, that's what I think.
So they were both in Mystic River.
Like,
okay.
So this is one of those things where you have to look at, like, do people grow? Like, what we learned early on is that people were going to listen to what the government had to say. And the problem I have with that is the reason this podcast is named what it is that the people parroting that information were these people, celebrities. And a lot of these people who were complying weren't complying because they actually watched the news. They're complying because they follow some celebrity on Twitter. That's somebody that they look up to, and for some reason they think because they can act in a movie that they are some type of authority on government or politics or health and or environmental crisis. You know, if we're talking about climate change and stuff like this. So that's what I'm talking about. The
crisis is that people depend on pop culture to make their worldviews, but pop culture has been infiltrated in some ways to be held to sort of unrealistic standards. There's not organic development of opinion. Exactly.
So the idea here is, my question is, can people grow? Like, what I've learned is that a lot of it is I've been told that it's harder to get somebody to realize they were wrong than it was to convince them of something in the first place, right? Sure. Like, once you've been told something wrong, it's harder to convince you that is not true than it is to convince you that it's true in the first place. Yeah. Right? So I find it harrowing when people can come to their own conclusions because they kept their eyes open. Yeah. There's a lot of YouTubers who have talked about how they believed certain things of certain groups and they didn't realize that they believed separately until they actually interacted with people in those groups. And in a society that is increasingly closed off, increasingly reliant on digital communication, which is automatically inherently combative.
Yeah.
Just interacting with people that see the world differently than you in a human manner is often enough to maybe not make you agree with them, but register humanity that can't be seen digitally. Mm-hmm. In this case, Tim Robbins didn't realize that he had come to a different conclusion, that he was going to start going to a different conclusion until he found himself biking past a protest against vaccine and mask mandates.
Yeah. So should we tell this story?
Yes.
So Tim Robbins did this interview with Russell Brand, and he says that he was just recounting his experience with the lockdowns and with COVID and how mandates affected him. He said he would get angry initially when he was in California and people weren't masking and people weren't social distancing. It was actually something that upset him. He goes to New York State. He lives there for a little while. He ends up in the UK, and his opinion begins to shift. And he says he was somewhere he could hear a protest, an anti-vaccine or anti-masking protest is what I think he says. And people... It's this funny thing where he's like, so I went there. I mean, I had my bike. I was biking around. Like,
I wasn't going there.
He said the words, I joined them. I mean, I just happened to come by. And he said, talking to the people who had these views, he's like, oh, they're not the people I thought they were. In fact, a lot of them are left and liberal and hippies and whatever else. And
they believe in personal freedom.
And they believe in medical autonomy, right? So I think this kind of honesty, I mean, I think in some ways you have to applaud Robin for being like, I am honest. I did not agree with this at all. I thought it was wrong, and I have changed my opinion.
It's very hard to admit that, especially in the, like, I find that like it's almost maybe easier in like an interview format than it would be online. Like, it's very hard to admit you're wrong. Like, every time I see people argue, like, one of my bad habits is I don't argue with people online, but I am a doom scroller who will read an argument that people have.
You are there with the popcorn?
I am like, but I hate it. I do it, but I hate it. Like, right? And like every once in a while, somebody will be like, oh yeah, you were right. I was wrong. And then like the person doesn't know how to respond to them because nobody expects anyone to ever admit that they weren't right about something.
And like you were saying before, like when people take a stance on something, especially publicly, like they don't want to back down. Now, I don't know that Tim Robbins backed down. He mentions in the interview he has a charity theater company that had to stop working. Like, it seemed like it is Hollywood, right? Like, he's a celebrity and he's an actor, but like a lot of Americans, lockdowns had an increasing effect on him, not just his business and his personal work, but also in the way he interacted and saw his community, saw people around him, like increasingly negative, increasingly hostile, until suddenly he was like, actually, I don't know. And he says he began to sort of question the information, especially when they started changing the words.
And it just feels like most people aren't questioning or don't I don't know if they just never take in that new information or if like the number one way that I feel like they get through it now is like they've demonized the news source that runs opposite to their worldview.
Yeah. Or if you were to say, like, if you polled people, you know, when vaccines first started coming out and people were like, no, it's the right thing to do. You need to do it. Help everybody, whatever else. And you genuinely believe it. Like, that is one thing. I would be curious 2 years out if it didn't have the same connotation as being like a conspiracy theorist or someone who's against culture or whatever else. Like, would people who got the vax who are like, yeah, but if I could do it again, I wouldn't. And it's not because I think that it's terrible. It's just I think that the pressure that was put on us to comply and the fear that was used to motivate us, like, turned out to not be as serious as it was, right? I think that we can all look back and be like, hey, I think we all would have made different, we would all handle that situation differently. But what's most notable is if you say that now, you have been brainwashed. You are giving into this other side when, like, we don't give anyone the space to be like, yeah, I think maybe we made the wrong call, or my opinion, I've gained more information and my opinion has changed.
You're QAnon now, or you've been brainwashed by people. Where was the first place you heard about it when news first started about the pandemic, about COVID?
Well, I was living in New York, and so I remember watching the news, and like for my job, I kind of kept an eye on it. But then I'd been really sick with the flu, like right before, and
I got sick right away.
I got sick early March, and it was like, you know, you're really sick, you're horrible. Like, I had such a high fever, and
in February, like right.
Yeah, I got sick like last couple days of February into early March, and I remember when I finally started feeling better, I took the train out of New York to like go see family, and as soon as I stepped on the platform, they were like, the first COVID case has been detected in New York. And like, that was like March 12th, 13th, like the world just started shutting down. But like there had been conversation about it since December of the year before.
That's what I was saying. Like I first heard about it from Styx Hexenhammer, who was talking about it in December.
Yeah.
And basically saying stock up on supplies. There's going to be problems and stuff like that. And it's like, maybe it's because you got that early warning from somebody that wasn't giving you panic vibes that it allows you to think more clearly. But if you're a working actor, you're not in tune to culture war issues, and politics aren't your thing outside of just what you take in on Twitter and in the news.
Yeah.
I can't blame them originally for acting or for being misinformed, but I do have problem with when your first thought goes to authoritarian measures and hatred and vengefulness. I take issue with that.
I think part of it is if you're living in cultures and cities that like, especially in industries like Hollywood, where it's like you need to keep up appearances and you need to see what everyone else is doing and go with it. Like you become even more susceptible to being like, I am going to see this decision for myself, right? And I, with Sean Penn 2 years out being like, you should not work if you should stay home. Like, are you looking
detached from reality?
Right. And are you looking at any of the science? Like, does that support it? Does that seem fair? Does that seem like that's a viable option for a human adult to just not
stay
work
home?
Are you saying that like they should compromise their beliefs? Like, we would hope that we live in societies where you are allowed to exercise autonomy over your decision making, and therefore your decisions are honored as much as they can be as anyone else, right? If someone chose, it's like now, like if you're on a plane and someone wears a mask, like, I don't care, do what you need to do, right?
I actually get annoyed when people complain. Like I have my bad moments where I roll my eyes, but I understand that some people are immunocompromised, and I'm as
just like I don't want to have to explain myself to someone else. I don't need you to explain yourself to me. Like if that's your choice, that's cool, but I'm not also going to do it, right? Yeah. And I think that this evolution of being like, I felt angry at people, like that was our culture's way of being like, if you don't comply, you are harming other people. And people who are empathetic are like, yeah, why would you do that? Like,
and the media pushed that.
Right.
It's like, you're killing grandma.
With no data and no science to back it up, and with no ability to say like, well, hey, what are the long-term consequences of these decisions? And like, it is funny to contrast these two people who co-starred, who are on different ends of this cycle, because I think they are, even though they're actors, like a sampling of the American public, they are people who are still rabid about what you should be doing. And there are people who are like, we are on the other side of this, and I look back and have taken away these lessons.
When we covered that topic about Bill Hader wearing a mask to like the Golden Globes or whatever, the comment section in like Cinema Blend or whatever it was, I don't remember which site I was reading. Oh, it was like AV Club. They were like, I'm with him. I'm not wearing my mask, and my kids are going to be wearing their masks until I know good and well that this is gone. That's never going to happen. It's 2023.
We aren't eradicating COVID. It's going to be endemic, and that's going to be true in a lot of countries. And we just need to decide when we're at that point. And a lot of medical experts believe we're there. If you choose to wear a mask, if you choose whatever, like, cool, do it. But if you're doing it to prove that you are better than people, like, that's actually not the effect. You're just proving that like you are more terrified, which I feel sad for you.
Well, and a lot of them look at that terror, that feeling is like virtuous. They're smart to be more terrified than you are. So I just think that this is the tale of how two celebrities who both have an enormous amount of public influence. I mean, comparatively speaking to us.
Who are you going to hear more about? Are you going to hear more about Sean Penn, who's saying the right thing? Or are you going to hear about Tim Robbins, who's like, over time, my opinion changed? And he's not even being rabid or saying, don't get it. He's just saying like, yeah, masking in particular, they have good questions about.
Yep. So it's like, maybe this is partially our fault as parts of the media too, but like the media doesn't reward nuance, and the media doesn't reward any type of middle of the road behavior. It only rewards the worst of people. Yeah. And I hate that. Like, one of the things about doing the show is like, I don't ever want to fall into the category of angry. Like, as much as a lot of the topics we cover make me angry, like there was I was sent a couple of topics, like things about like horrible things. Like, it was about like trans gamer gets caught texting like that stuff just makes me angry. It makes me sad, and it makes me angry because you know that people are being hurt. And I have to be able to ask myself, if we cover this, can I cover this in a rational way that will not just seem like I'm spewing venom?
Right.
Because one, it weighs on me.
Yeah.
Over time, and I can't do that. Like, it's just not in me. Like, a lot of people, they thrive on it. They love the anger. They love the vitriol. And if that's your medium, and like, there's an audience for that. Like, that's fine. That's your thing. That's not my thing. I can't do it for my own soul, basically.
Yeah.
But like, I don't want to get that angry. But the media doesn't reward nuance. It rewards anger.
Yeah. Well, and I think we have this fall in line attitude. Like, there are right opinions and there are wrong opinions, and if you don't say the right thing, we assume that you believe the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And I have just always felt like I want to have enough humility to say that I don't know enough about everything to have an opinion on it, and to
that's how I
you know what I mean? Like,
everything.
I think so much of the world is being shepherded into one side, or because they're afraid of being pushed into the other, and the consequences of those things.
Yeah.
And I think that they're like Tim Robinson. There are a lot of people who will tell you, like, yeah, at first I thought, like, sure, let's do this. This is the information I had, and I tried to make the best decision with it. And as I gained more information, it evolved. And I wish that we believed in that narrative as much, but unfortunately, like, there's a lopsidedness. There's a reason. You know, I don't want to like
and
to
we
get
live
too political, but like,
we live in a 24-hour news cycle. There's never downtime to reflect.
Well, and that means that there's no time for you to make your own decision.
Yeah.
Like, I think you should be given all the information you can be, and you make your own decision from there. And yeah, of course, there are going to be people that you maybe trust, you know, that their opinion, or, you know, whatever their background is,
their track record,
it's a little bit more weighted for you. So if they say something, you believe it. But like, ultimately, I just think limiting information is the most dangerous thing.
Absolutely.
And I think that, like, in some ways, Sean Penn is showing, like, he doesn't have all the information. Like, he has stopped listening to the narrative in December of 2020, and that's it.
Stuck there.
He doesn't know anything that's happened since, and so much with all of these rules and regulations have happened since.
Yep, it's sad, and then it's like, and we know that the mainstream media has an ironclad way of like keeping things secret. They just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Like, look at what's happening with like the Twitter files. They win just by not talking about it.
For sure.
They like, that's the sad part. It's like, I get angry because I'm like, look at all these people that aren't getting informed because they're just not hearing about it from bad actors.
Right.
It is what it is. Thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.